The human digestive system involves multiple organs of multiple different tissue types and multiple types of enzymes to break down all the different types of food that we eat. As part of the GCSE biology curriculum, you need to know the position, relative position, and names of the organs involved with this digestion. You need to be able to describe whether they are a physical or a chemical breakdown, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for the more difficult stuff, you need to be able to remember the type of enzyme produced in each part of the digestive system and also what those enzymes do. We're not going to go into a great load of detail about how enzymes work. That'll be saved for a different time. What we're just going to go through are the names of the enzymes and a general overview of what their role is. So to start with, what I've done is I've just put red boxes around the parts of the digestive system that come up an awful lot. Will be good to remember. And it starts with the tongue. Something that isn't labeled is the salivary gland that's in the mouth, leading down the esophagus. Obviously, the trachea is for breathing. The esophagus is for food. Down into the stomach, then down into the small intestine, then the large intestine. Okay, but there are other digestive organs that are involved, like the liver and the pancreas and the gallbladder, which have either chemicals or enzymes that are also involved in digestion. Some things that I always go for will be the shape of some organs. It's really common, a question that asks you to label a organ. So the liver is a very good one. It's always the sort of like a triangular shape when you've got here this liver. The gallbladder is usually right below it or right on top of it. It's gallbladder here. The stomach, we all know that very, very common sort of shape that a stomach is drawn in. The small intestines on the inside, these little squigglies, and the large intestine runs on the outside. Okay. So here is a diagram. I've removed all of the labels as best I can. I want you to pause this video now and try and identify some of them. It would be really cruel to have a question in an exam paper that has all of them missing and no labels, and you get to label all of them. Usually you've got some that have been entered for you. So, I mean, I've been a little bit worse, and I've just tried to remove all of them I can, even if they're not to do with digestion. Here's the slide that talks you through the answers. So pause it again and check your answers. But what you'll find, you won't find one specific picture that's used for every single exam paper, every single question. You'll find different drawings and different pictures. So on the next slide, again, pause it. I'm not going to put any labels on for you, but I would like you to have a look at that, see if you can identify, I don't know, 3 or 4, and then resume the video. Even though it is a different picture, a different type of picture, this one's got color in it. It looks like it's got more labels than the first one. You can see some general things that are the same. So if I put the answers up, you can see that the liver is that characteristic triangular shape still. You can just about make out the gallbladder there. I know that the image is a little bit small, and the stomach with its usual shape, the small intestine on the inside of the large intestine that runs around the outside. All of these things have a similar shape. Doesn't matter what picture you look at. So that's what you need to get into the habit of doing. And I encourage you to just go to Google, type in GCSE, digestive system, labeled or unlabeled, and have a look at all the different images there. See if you can spot all of the organs that are in each different picture. The more pictures that you can look at and try to go through, the better. Now, moving on to different parts of the digestive system, that there are 2 types of breakdown for food. You've got a physical breakdown, you've got a chemical breakdown. Okay, a physical breakdown is going to be a churning of or chewing of food. So that's food being pulled apart by force. So obviously in your mouth, it's your teeth. In your stomach, you've got muscles that can churn food, and you've got hydrochloric acid as well that can be used. That's different to a chemical breakdown, which is using enzymes, and those enzymes can break up a molecule into smaller pieces. and we're going to go into detail about the 3 types of enzymes that are used in digestion, the main ones that you need to know. But that's a physical and a chemical breakdown. I'll use green for physical breakdown and chemical for as a red font as well as we go through. So starting at the top, starting with the head, I've already said that food is chewed. We've got teeth. That's what teeth are for, is a chemical breakdown. But you also have salivary glands in your mouth, and that salivary glands, they secrete an enzyme called amylase. This is why your mouth starts watering when you sit down for food, or you can smell some nice food, because those salivary glands are getting ready to digest whatever food's going to be churned up inside your mouth. This enzyme amylase breaks down carbohydrates into simpler sugars. Okay, you can test it by getting a piece of white bread, just the middle of it, not the crust. Just place that piece of white bread on your tongue and let it sit there for a minute or so, and you might find it starts to feel a bit sweet, and you can taste sweetness on the bread. That's because the carbohydrate in the bread is breaking down into more simple sugars, and that's sweeter. As the food is eaten, it goes down the esophagus into the stomach, and in the stomach, again, we have both a physical and a chemical breakdown. The physical breakdown is being churned up by muscles in the stomach wall, and the chemical is another enzyme, a different enzyme, called Pepsin, which is a protease, which breaks down proteins inside the stomach. Not much more to this. The stomach is a very complex organ made of a lot of glandular tissue, muscular tissue, epithelial tissue. It's a really good example of lots of different tissues working together to make an organ. After the food in the stomach has been churned up and been digested for a few hours, it moves on to the small intestine. And you can see, I'm circling it with my pointer. Before it can get to the small intestine, it has to pass pancreas on its way. Now, this here is sometimes called the duodenum or the duodenum, depending on what videos you watch. And in the duodenum, all the enzymes that the pancreas produce, you can see there's only red text here. There's no physical breakdown from the pancreas. That's because there's lots of different enzymes that the pancreas produces. We have proteases to break down protein. We have lipases to break down fat or lipids, and more carbohydrases, which break down carbohydrates like starch. All 3 of those types are all made in the pancreas and are secreted into the duodenum, which mix with the food as it passes. The food that comes through, sometimes can have a little bit of stomach acid with it, so it's very acidic. So we also have, I haven't written it down, but we also have the bile duct here and the gallbladder, which produce bile, and that bile runs through the bile duct and mixes with the food as well, just to neutralize any acid that's come through. So we don't get any acid go onto the small intestine to damage it. Now, in the small intestine, again, we only have a chemical breakdown. We have the small intestine producing another carbohydrate, okay, called maltase. Now, this maltase breaks maltose into glucose. So that maltose was produced further up in the mouth, and maltase breaks the maltose that was created in the mouth into glucose. The large intestine, I've just put it here, it's not red or green because it's not physical or chemical breakdown, but that large intestine, as a reminder, is there just to absorb some water. Okay, so that last little bit, anything that's left, all the nutrients have been extracted, anything that's left, like water, is absorbed here. And finally, the recap, just a very quick recap. It's a very quick video. We have salivary glands producing amylase, that's in the mouth. The stomach produces an enzyme called pepsin. The pancreas produces amylase, which is a carbohydrate, lipase, and protease. And the small intestine, I know the arrow looks like it's pointing to the large, small intestine here, makes maltase. And carbohydrases break down carbohydrates into sugars. Lipases break down lipids or fats into fatty acid chains and glycerol. And proteases break down proteins to amino acids. And a final hint, whenever you're reading something, let's get the highlighter, anything that ends in ase is an enzyme. And the first little bit will tell you, 9 times out of 10 will tell you what it is. So a carbohydrase is an enzyme that breaks down carbohydrate. A lipase is an enzyme that breaks down lipids. A protease is an enzyme that breaks down proteins. That's a good thing to remember, even when you get onto A-level biology, that enzymes, generally speaking, unless they've got a different name like amylase, will break down something. So that's the human digestive system, a very brief run of the human digestive system. If you have any questions whatsoever about the organs involved, the placement of the organs, or the roles of the organs, including the enzymes that they produce, please do not hesitate to ask a question, get in touch.